Hi, Marco Di Stefano here. In this video I'm going to show you the final setup of my machine. So after having tested the i9-7940X, which you might have seen in my previous video, I then decided to make the upgrade to the i9-7960X. This new CPU has 16 cores with 32 threads and 22 MB of cache. I'm using the same motherboard as in the previous video and always using 128 of GB of RAM. I didn't try to do overclocking yet, so the test I'm showing you is with a standard CPU clock, which has a base frequency of 2.8 with a turbo of 4.2. The test I'm using here is based on this project, where I have a chord played by 100 Spitfire audio instruments, all loaded inside my orchestral template. Each track has its own automation for modulation, expression and vibrato. There are long notes, but there are also short notes with different velocities. And for the long notes and the short notes, there are also different articulations which are loaded. So this gives a kind of good test case for a composition where there are different articulations and different sounds loaded in memory. In the back of this, there is a Vienna Ensemble Pro. So you can see here all the instances of contact which are loaded. So for the woodwinds, for the brass and for the strings. You can also see that for each instrument there are always loaded 3 microphones in memory, which is yes, a good base for every composition. And also important to say is that Vienna is set with a buffer size of 2. So this will finally double the buffer that is set through the audio card. Let's now start to run the test. And for the first try, let's set a buffer size of 256. Okay, so I will show the impact of the real-time processing, showing the processor and also the audio performance in Cubase. Impeccable. You have seen that the real-time performance was great. Now let's go with a lower buffer size and let's see what happens. Let's say also that this was actually the lower limit for the i9-7940X. Great also here. Now let's continue to reduce the buffer size and see what is the result. So already, for example, this buffer size was not possible to achieve with the 7940X. Still great result. But let's try now with a very demanding 128 buffer size. Okay, so now we can hear that there are some small artifacts. But probably this is also due to the fact that I'm running at the same time OBS to capture the screen, and also another plugin which actually records the output, yes, here, the output of Cubase. Because when I do that, using only Cubase, the 128 buffer size works great. One very important thing that I want you to show is that you have seen the peak of the CPU usage reached 76%, which is quite a good result for a real-time performance. So if you are asking how is it possible that we hear these artifacts, even if the CPU is not using more than 76% on its peak, the answer is because this is a real-time processing. And it's quite different than, for example, when we do export of the track, which is not done in real time. Let's see now what it gives if we want to export these tracks, and I'm doing this in waves, 48K, 32-bit. So you can see now that the CPU reaches the 100% of its usage. And you can also see that the export is actually done without efforts, and it takes some less time than the real track duration. The question now is it possible to make also 100% use of the CPU when doing real-time processing and maybe even try to use lower latencies? Well, the answer is not that easy because it depends on the overall setup of your digital audio workstation. Of course, you can imagine that the CPU is used by many other processes. And so the only way to improve the CPU usage for real-time processing will be to shut down these other processes which locks the CPU. So like processes like for the Bluetooth, antivirus, video card. In my case, I'm quite satisfied with the real-time performance of this machine. So I didn't spend any time investigating in this. I think that the build here is quite stable. So I have to say that I've carefully chosen components which were part of the compatibility matrix. So for example, looking at the specification of the motherboard. So do not forget to do the same if you intend to build your own machine. It's very important. It's not just the CPU which makes the power of the machine, but is the overall compatibility of the different components. So thank you very much for watching this video. Hope that this was helpful for you to make a decision on your future PC build, and see you in the next video.